Then Jesus, crying out with a loud voice, Father, into thy hands I shall commit my spirit, breathed his last. And immediately one could see the rocks rent, for there was an earthquake over all the earth, and from the earthquake being violent and great, the rocks also were rent. And the tombs of the dead were opened, and the curtain of the temple was rent. And there was darkness from the 6th hour till the 9th. And from all these things that had happened, the Jews were afraid, and said, Certainly this was a just man. And Longinus, the centurion who stood by, said, Truly this was a son of God. Others coming and seeing him beat their breasts from fear, and again turned back. And the centurion, having perceived all these so great miracles, went away and reported them to Pilate. And when he heard, he wondered and was astonished, and from his fear and grief would neither eat nor drink that day. And he sent notice, and all the Sanhedrin came to him as soon as darkness was past. And he said to the people, You know how the sun has been darkened, you know how the curtain has been rent. Certainly I did well in being by no means willing to put to death the good man. And the malefactor said to Pilate, This darkness is an eclipse of the sun, such as has happened also at other times. Then they say to him, We hold the feast of unleavened bread tomorrow, and we entreat thee, since the crucified are still breathing, that their bones be broken, and that they be brought down. Pilate said, It shall be so. He therefore sent soldiers, and they found the 2 robbers yet breathing, and they broke their legs. But finding Jesus dead, they did not touch him at all, except that a soldier speared him in the right side, and immediately there came forth blood and water. And as the day of preparation was drawing toward evening, Joseph, a man well born and rich, a God-fearing Jew, finding Nicodemus, whose sentiments his foregoing speech had shown, says to him, I know that thou did love Jesus when living, and did gladly hear his words, and I saw thee fighting with the Jews on his account. If then it seems good to thee, let us go to Pilate, and beg the body of Jesus for burial, because it is a great sin for him to lie unburied. I am afraid, said Nicodemus, lest Pilate should be enraged, and some evil should befall me. But if thou wilt go alone, and beg the dead, and take him, then will I go also with thee, and help thee to do everything necessary for burial. Nicodemus having thus spoken, Joseph directed his eyes to heaven, and prayed that he might not fail in his request. And he went away to Pilate, and having saluted him, sat down. Then he says to him, I entreat thee, my Lord, not to be angry with me, if I shall ask anything contrary to what seems good to your highness. And he said, And what is it that thou ask? Joseph says, Jesus, the good man whom through hatred the Jews have taken away to crucify, him I entreat that thou give me for burial. Pilate says, And what has happened, that we should deliver to be honored again the dead body of him against whom evidence of sorcery was brought by his nation, and who was in suspicion of taking the kingdom of Caesar, and so was given up by us to death. And Joseph, weeping and in great grief, fell at the feet of Pilate, saying, My Lord, let no hatred fall upon a dead man, for all the evil that a man has done should perish with him in his death. And I know, your highness, how eager thou wast that Jesus should not be crucified. and how much thou said to the Jews on his behalf, now in entreaty, and again in anger, and at last how thou didst wash thy hands, and declare that thou wouldest by no means take part with those who wished him to be put to death. For all which reasons I entreat thee not to refuse my request. Pilate therefore, seeing Joseph thus lying, and supplicating and weeping, raised him up and said, Go, I grant thee this dead man. Take him and do whatever thou wilt. And then Joseph, having thanked Pilate and kissed his hands and his garments, went forth rejoicing indeed in heart, as having obtained his desire, but carrying tears in his eyes. Thus also, though grieved, he was glad. Accordingly, he goes away to Nicodemus and discloses to him all that had happened. Then, having brought myrrh and aloes, 100 pounds, and a new tomb, they, along with the mother of God and Mary Magdalene and Salome, along with John and the rest of the women, did what was customary for the body with white linen, and placed it in the tomb. And the mother of God said, weeping, How am I not to lament thee, my son? How should I not tear my face with my nails? This is that, my son, which Simeon the elder foretold to me when I brought thee, an infant of 40 days old, into the temple. This is the sword which now goes through my soul. Who shall put a stop to my tears, my sweetest son? No one at all except thyself alone. If, as thou saidst, thou shalt rise again in 3 days. Mary Magdalene said, weeping, Hear, O peoples, tribes, and tongues, and learn to what death the lawless Jews have delivered him who did them 10,000 good deeds. Hear and be astonished. Who will let these things be heard by all the world? I shall go alone to Rome, to the Caesar. I shall show him what evil Pilate hath done in obeying the lawless Jews. Likewise also Joseph lamented, saying, Ah me, sweetest Jesus, most excellent of men, if indeed it be proper to call thee man, who has wrought such miracles as no man has ever done. How shall I enshroud thee? How shall I entomb thee? There should now have been here those whom thou feddest with a few loaves, for thus should I not have seemed to fail in what is due. Then Joseph, along with Nicodemus, went home, and likewise also the mother of God, with the women, John also being present with them.